Welcome back to the page. For those of y'all who are new here, hey, how's it going? My name is Jordan. I'm a media creator who basically created this page to take you along with me for the journey, show you my growth, as well as, get insight and advice from you guys in terms of like how best to grow, operate, and just be a better creative. So yeah, without further ado, hopefully you guys enjoy this. By the way, this is Creator Talk episode 3. Anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying, but let's get into it. As you guys can see, this video is titled Things You Should Consider Before Handing Footage Over to an Editor. And as someone who edits for others pretty frequently, as well as someone who sends off footage to be edited, I kind of came up with like a list that I realized needs to be, put out there, or at least needs to be pitched or suggested that we should do as creatives or as editors, and like things we should ask for. And I just wanted to share that list with you guys, as well as get feedback on what else you think should be added to this list. So yeah, the first thing on this list is organization. So just like on a shoot where you have like pre-production and basically all that planning that goes into, before you even start pressing record on the camera, I think that planning like that should also go into editing. Like before the edit starts or before you hand off footage to an editor, these key things should be like thought about, or that should be established. And yeah, I don't think we tend to always consider that as creatives. We sometimes just say, hey, like these editors have probably been doing their job for a minute, like they know what they're doing, but sometimes you gotta take a step back and treat everyone as if they probably weren't doing it for a minute, just so that there's that seamlessness or that cohesiveness between us as the shooters and creatives and them as the editors and final product makers as far as we're concerned. Organization goes a long way when sending someone footage, and I don't just mean organization in the sense where it's like you put it in a folder and you're like, hey, like this is the folder, this is the project name, like that's it. No, organize that folder, in my opinion, to the T. So have an audio section and sound effects section, a graphics section, a footage section. If that footage section needs to have an A-roll, B-roll, C-roll, I think that is the most clutch thing that you can do, especially for an editor. Because when you're on a call with them and saying, hey, could you check folder A for this specific Blackmagic RAW clip or whatever, they can know that it's in folder A. Bear in mind, if they mess up the folder structure, that's on them, I guess. But if they have it exactly how you sent it, then you guys can have such seamless dialogue. And I think that's so underrated or so undervalued that it's not something that I guess smaller creatives do, but you would see that on bigger productions, especially with like DITs. They organize like all the footage, and then once it passes off to someone else, that person goes in and like ensures that it goes into the right folder structure. I'm still learning the roles inside of filmmaking, so hopefully I didn't get that wrong in terms of a DIT's role, but I do believe that they have some control over like folder organization or like project structure in terms of like the final media coming off that card. So if I'm wrong, I'll obviously put a disclaimer down here, but I do believe that I'm right in that regard, but at the same time, maybe not. The second thing I would 100% consider is what the person who's going to be editing for you is using in terms of programs. For me personally, I edit with DaVinci Resolve. However, I used to edit on Premiere Pro before, I decided that it just wasn't feasible, either pricing wise or just the complexity of it when it comes down to color grading. So I personally switched over to DaVinci. A lot of friends of mine, or a lot of people who I know, also edit on DaVinci, and they're actually pretty competent with it. So when it comes on to like certain things, I know I can like pick people's brains and ask questions. But if you're sending off footage to a Premiere Pro user and you're a DaVinci editor, you have to understand that that workflow can work and it can be seamless, but they would have to convert it to a Final Cut Pro XML and then send it off to you, and then you have to import it, and then you have to like work on certain things when it comes down to graphics. If they use After Effects, it's gonna be like a weird transfer over. So always ensure to ask editors like, hey, what program are you using? And basically ask them if they're willing to work with your program, because they might be working with Premiere and be competent with Premiere, but they also might be competent with DaVinci, but most of their clients prefer when they use Premiere. So if you were to say, hey, I use DaVinci, my team uses DaVinci, so do you think we could like work something out? they might be open and say, yeah, like I don't mind, like I use DaVinci like all the time, it's just people prefer Premiere. So always be willing to have that conversation and have that dialogue. That way it's less friction, it's less weirdness when it comes on to like, hey, could you send me the project file for me to review it? And it's like, oh yeah, and you're like, wait, what is this? It's like, oh yeah, that's the project file. And you see like, Premiere Pro, and you're like, like I'm on After Effects. I'm on Final Cut, or I'm on DaVinci, or even I'm on CapCut, so I think that's a step that is really crucial. And maybe it's not important to some people, but to me, I personally would always ask that question, especially if it's a new editor, or if it's someone who you're not sure of yet. Like, you have them on like testing grounds basically. So yeah, consider that. The second thing I would consider is ensuring that when you're having that conversation with them initially about, hey, this is basically the project, this is what we're gonna do, XYZ and all that, tell them what codec you're shooting. Why is that important? You don't wanna get an editor who has a bunch of work under their belt. Like, don't get me wrong, like they might have a stacked portfolio, but then when it comes on to like what you're shooting, so you might be shooting B-RAW, or ProRes RAW, or Red RAW, or Nikon RAW, like it doesn't matter, or even just regular H.265. They might be used to getting H.264 only, and they produce great content with that. So getting your B-RAW footage, or getting your red RAW footage, or even the H.265, you never know. Maybe their system is not equipped to handle it, or maybe they just aren't comfortable in working with that because either, I don't know, there's just gonna be some limitation that they might have. You never know. And that's why you always have to, again, just have that conversation, be as specific as possible, and ask those questions. So I would say like asking, what codec, or not asking, telling them what codec you're shooting. I think that would be pretty clutch and pretty valuable in terms of like allowing them to think about it and sit on like, okay, should I actually accept this project because like they're working with some heavy stuff and I don't think I'm okay with working with that, or yeah, I've worked with that all the time, so it's no problem, it's no big deal. So definitely consider explaining what codec you're using, and also asking them, probably depending on if the project doesn't need a specific codec, asking them what they think in terms of their workflow would work best for them. So if they say, hey, I'm a Final Cut Pro guy, if you send me ProRes, like butter, like I get to chop that up quickly and I get to work on it seamless. If you send me Blackmagic RAW, then I'm gonna have to like see what I could do about that. So yeah, I don't know, take that into consideration. See what you could do about that for your workflow. Obviously, if you have a specific codec that you need, that client requires it, or you as just your team, like your team works with this specific thing, don't change it. Just ensure that you're open about it and have that conversation about it. So for me, I do a lot of events, and I don't do only like events like frat house stuff and like parties and bar content. I also do like corporate events from time to time. It's not really like something that I would say I'm locked into, which I want to be, so something I'm working on, but I do events. And if I were to send off footage to someone and say, hey, like chop this up, which I have in the past, I sent off the footage and what I got back was a hype reel, and I'm like, no, like this is a corporate event, it needs to be streamlined, more slow, subtle, like recapping the event to like a nice pace, like making people feel like they want to be there, or they should have been there, like they missed it out. And they were like, oh shoot, all right, my bad, like you should have clarified that. And I sat there and I was like, fair, I should have, but based on the footage, I would assume that you would think, oh, this is an event, like a corporate event, like something proper, nothing too quick and fast. So that on my end as a creative, that was my bad, and I should have taken that into consideration. So definitely always ensure that you clarify the audience that the media is going to, as well as the upload location, because it might be going to Reels even though it's a recap reel of a corporate event, or it might be going to YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. Like, so that also determines the aspect ratio of the export, or determines the quality of the export, because you don't want to be exporting 8K and then be putting it on YouTube, because then you're gonna basically have to compress it down to 4K regardless, or putting 8K on Instagram, because Lord knows what Instagram is gonna do to 8K. So definitely always try to be that transparent when it comes on to like, yeah, this is what my client wants, this is the audience that we're trying to reach. see what you could do, because that also ensures that for certain things they don't like go ham with the transitions or ham with the graphics, but then for something like an event reel for like a bar, they can turn that up and be all crazy and, you know, do whatever they want. So consider that, and I mean, you know, think about it for the next project. Shoot enough that you have enough for an edit, but don't say like, oh, they might need this clip or they might need that clip, because then you're gonna end up with a drive with 200 gigs of footage. I've been there. I've actually ended up with drives with 300 gigs of footage from one event. And if I wanted someone to edit for me, I'm gonna be like, yeah, here you go. They're like, oh yeah, what's the file size? I'm like, 300 gigs. And they're like, brother man, what? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, nah, you could like call that or cut it down. And that kind of got me thinking. I was like, oh shoot, not everybody casually has 16 terabytes sitting down on. And not to say that like I just have storage galore, I'm just saying like not everyone has that caliber of like storage just ready to go. So yeah, if you can undershoot in terms of like overshoot for the edit, but undershoot for the editor, like don't give them 600 clips because like, oh, every single fruit you saw at the event had like a nice little twinkle to it, so you think that that'll be a great match cut or whatever. Like, nah, be careful when it comes on to overshooting or over delivering, because at the end of the day, like, they're the ones who are gonna have to deal with that. They're the ones who are gonna have to go through it, which again is their job, but just be mindful of that or be considerate. And I think that's just a fair thing to do. We're humans at the end of the day. We all have sleep to get, so you know, factor that in. I can't speak for anybody else, or I can't like say if anybody else cares about this, but shaky footage, like if the footage is shaky naturally and needs to be in the edit, then fine, that's fine. But if you're on a 200 mil and like you have the lens wobble, like I'm not talking about just the regular outer edges that you can like crop in, like DaVinci has some great stabilization tools, but I'm talking about the wobble that happens when like you just can't fix it. Trust me when I say you cannot fix lens shake on like a 200 mil, 600 mil, 800, like it's just a weird distorted thing that my eyes personally hate. Like I'm a gimbal up guy, like, and I also run a Panasonic, so when it comes on to like smooth footage, I'm sorry, I'm kind of, I guess I would say, spoiled regarding that. But yeah, shaky footage for an editor sometimes might just ruin the day. Especially if they're like me. As I said, I don't mind it. Like if it's something that sells the edit, or if it's something that's needed, like again, an event reel, like you want to have like some whips to the DJ, some whips to the crowd, some nice little like shake shots to give those transitions ease to use. Like you just drop on a transition, it's just like shoot, nice little cut, right? But at the same time, for like a corporate event or even for like a standing interview, if you are holding a 200 mil for an interview without IBIS on, without lens stabilization on, just holding it, and there's some wobbles, I don't know what to tell you. Personally, I can't work on that, but at the same time, I guess I'll try to figure it out. But if the footage comes back to you with some little warps because of the stabilizer not wanting to like work in post, then I don't know, that's on you as a shooter, but be mindful of that. Like if you can like press the camera closer to you and get some structure on it, or even drop it on a gimbal or steady rig or easy rig or whatever, I don't know, try to make the footage stable. And if you can't make it stable, then be intentional with how it shakes. That's something I've learned, especially while shooting events. So yeah, I don't know, try it. I think that'll be really cool. So I made a mistake on when I first started videoing, especially when it comes down to like talking pieces like this. I always was like, oh, let me just set the audio to like this because that's what people on YouTube are saying or whatever. And then when I'm in post editing, I'm like, where is this like noise coming from? Why am I hearing this? Because some cameras have hot preamps, and at the same time, some cameras have great preamps and hot like line. Like if you plug in like an external mic, like what I'm using right now is the DJI wireless mic. Like it's just a regular one, not a two. So yeah, I'm using the DJI wireless mic. And this mic, basically, if I were to just keep the gain as normal and just record straight out of camera into it, it would be like so hissy and hot. But dropping all the settings down and dialing it in to match my camera specifically, I think I get pretty good audio out of this microphone, but that's something I had to learn the hard way. I was on a set and the previous mics I had, there were some Godox mics. Bear in mind, I'm not saying anything bad about them because they were pretty good mics, but I had them set wrong for a shoot. And while listening to the playback of an interview, I can hear that hiss. Bear in mind, we live in a day and age where we have AI and we have DaVinci's noise reduction where I could take it out. But that was an extra production step. That was an extra production thing that had to be done. And if this was a project that had to be turned around quickly, I can't say, oh, hey, give me like a few more days to edit because X, Y, Z or whatever, because that was on me. So this also goes for us as creators when we're giving it over to an editor. Even if we're giving it over to an audio guy whose job is to fix the audio, ensure that what we deliver audio-wise is good, or at least clean enough that it's just minimal tweaks, minimal edit. Obviously, if a truck runs past and is, you know, pulling the Jake brake or whatever, then we can't control that. But yeah, let's see if we can like deliver some clean audio, some clean footage as well, like, you know, both mixed in together, because audio is basically more important than video. Like, you can have the best image in the world, but if your audio is crappy, you're not going to retain an audience, and that sucks because that's the world we live in. People want to hear, people are very like engaged when it feels like they're in the moment, or it feels like they're in that environment. Man, I feel like I'm saying it wrong, so I'm sorry if I have the wrong words. I'll probably put some text in the bottom or whatever, but yeah, just ensure that the audio that you deliver to your editor is clean, and just, if it means that you have to like rent a mic, like a proper shotgun mic, or rent an audio guy to catch audio for you, because that way that's his job speciality and you won't have to worry about it, then do that. If not, then maybe upgrade your mics, which is something that I ended up having to do because I like having internal recording, especially for events, because I can just leave my mic on top of the DJ deck, lower the gain, and know that I'm gonna get clean audio from the deck. Or I can plug it in via aux cord and make it come through into the mic and then run my other mics. I can sync up audio. That's just my workflow and that's just what I do. So definitely find what works for you, and I don't know, try it and see what happens. When it comes on to export and delivery, this is something that I guess people tend to like not do just because there's like a stigma against it, but always keep in contact with your editor. Like, it may seem annoying, it may seem like you're being pestering or whatever, but hit them up. Hey, how's the edit going? Do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? Do you have anything that you need me to like clarify or do or whatever? Because one, they'll feel like you care. Like, you didn't just hand them something that you didn't want to do, like, you know, hands off, like it's your job now. Like, no, you care about it and you want to like be engaged in the process. But at the same time, if they have questions, sometimes us as editors, and I say us because as I said, I edit as well. Sometimes us as editors, we feel scared because we don't want to mess up your project. Like, you might shoot something butter, like absolutely fire, but then we're sitting there like, I don't know what to do with this clip though. Like, should I leave it in? Should I take it out? And then all it takes is, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? And it's like, yeah, I'm doing good. I've been working on this clip. It's not sticking. It's like, oh no, man, you can like take that out. It's all good. We don't need that in there, X, Y, Z, whatever. Sometimes I get that we should put the initiative out there as the editor and say, hey, the footage that you have right now, this thing is shaky. I don't like it. Do you still want it in there? But people aren't really that like brave to just say stuff like that, you know? So if you as a creative can like hit up your editor and say, how's it going? Talk to me, what we're dealing with, then say less. Once you guys have that conversation and dialogue and then they finish the footage, send it over for the first review. After that first review, give them, it sounds weird, but give them a performance review. Like, hey man, so I looked at it, I realized that like a few of these transitions are a bit wonky, but we'll lock that in and finalize it. I think that goes a long way, because then future reference or future project, I can know, all right, that transition, I used that last time, didn't like it because it didn't work at the project or it didn't sell the project. So let me wheel and come again. Let me adjust and see how best I can probably use something different or probably approach it differently. So yeah, that's just something to be considered. And then yeah, make sure to be as helpful as possible and just explain as much as you can. Obviously, some projects, once you're finished shooting, it's basically a matter of, all right, what do we do with the footage now? But if you went into that project with your full-on pre-production plan, your shot list, your everything, you should come out ready to just say, yo, let's get at it and let's get it done. And if you're happy, the editor is happy, trust me when I say the client will be happy. So yeah, let's just I guess take these steps and see how we can incorporate into our workflow. I definitely have incorporated a lot of these into my workflow, as well as just talked about it. Like whenever I'm editing for someone, I'm like, hey, question, this, I kind of felt a way about this in terms of like, should we approach it this way or should we approach it that way? And I've gotten positive feedback, or at least I've gotten to have a conversation versus just sitting there and just saying, all right, you know what, it's fine, like I'll just do what I do. I don't believe we as creatives should do that. I think we should definitely be more open to having conversations and having dialogue, especially when it comes down to either A, hiring people, or B, being hired by people. So on both the side of the editor, hey, always ask questions, always ensure that you know exactly what you're getting into, you know exactly what you're doing, always ensure that you're willing and able to do the job. On the flip side, for creatives, always ensure that you're taking into consideration your editor, what they need, what will help the project be as successful as possible. And besides that, just, yeah, keep the communication, be kind, and basically just create some good work. So those are my 10 things you should consider when giving footage over to an editor. Yeah, that's it. I had one bonus tip, which again, personal experience, so I mean, I'm gonna throw it in there. Even though I did say not to overshoot, if you do overshoot and like that editor needs to like have that footage, get them a drive and make that drive their drive. So it's like every time you shoot 2 terabytes worth of footage, that 1 terabyte drive, or sorry, that 4 terabyte drive is theirs. Like write their name on it. That way they edit using that. They don't have to use their storage. They don't have to buy more cloud storage. Like it's their drive. Literally, I've had a project where I shot for someone and we're in like a hotel dumping media, and it was like a wedding. So there was like other creatives or other videographers, and we all dumped footage onto like my drive because my drive was the biggest. And the main videographer was like, yeah, just put it on my Mac. And I was like, cool. And he had 256 gigs of storage. And I was like, hey, sir, what's good? Do you have like a bigger drive? And he was like, yeah. And the bigger drive was a 1 terabyte. And I was like, yeah, between the 5 of us, this drive has 3 terabytes worth of footage. So I had a SanDisk, that's a lie. I had a Sabrent, because I don't use SanDisk stuff. I have a Sabrent, it's like an NVMe enclosure, and it had a 4 terabyte drive in it. And it just was like, you know what, here you go. And to this day, I call that drive my share drive, because I'll just hand it off to anyone, creative wise. You edit, you do whatever you need with the footage, and send me back my drive. The day someone doesn't send me back my drive, I'm fighting, because I've never had anyone not give me back my drive. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, like send me back the drive, I clear it, and it's for the next creator, you know? Like this wedding videographer basically flew out, because he flew in for the wedding. He flew out and basically kept in contact with me. Hey, I'm working on a project right now, just dumped the media on my NAS. What's your address? And within like, I think 5 days or 4 days, I don't know, I think I had school, so I forgot it was in the mail, but my drive arrived in proper, you know, UPS shipping bag and whatever. And, you know, I found that pretty cool. So if you can do that as a creative, I say get an SSD, or even get like something, like SSD, hard drive, whatever, that they can have that footage locally. Speaking of having footage locally, when it comes on to colorists or people who are grading footage, I understand that as creatives, we definitely don't want to like just hand over our raws like that. Like we hand over proxies, they work on a project, XYZ, whatever. But if you're handing footage to someone to color it, especially for colors, and you know, shout out Josh for this, but send over the raw footage, send over the original clips, because they need to be working on that from the jump. Like you don't want to send them a proxy, and then when you bring back the proxy, there's like some discrepancy on the proxy versus the original media. Again, if you shoot a lot of footage, that might be iffy, because just a lot of footage, invest in that drive and send it over. So yeah, those are the bonus tips I had. I mean, I guess tying into one above it, like send proxies. Like that wasn't clear. Like please send proxies. Like you have a couple of terabytes of footage and you can cull it down to like 256 gigs of storage. Send 256 gigs worth of proxies versus a terabyte worth of original media. Just because, one, it makes it easy to download if you're sending it via cloud service, so Dropbox, WeTransfer, PicFlow, or whatever. But it also makes it easier on the editor, because if they're only cutting footage and like organizing audio, they can scrub through that as quickly as possible. And if you guys are doing like a team project, you can be on that timeline at the same time, and there's less machine fatigue. That's the word I'm going to be using, machine fatigue. So consider it. But yeah, those are my 10 tips and those are my bonus tips. Hopefully it was helpful, and hopefully you guys like learned something from it, because I know for a fact I did, especially when considering these things. So yeah, as usual, hope everyone's doing good. If you guys have tips that I left out in this and want to drop in the comment section, go for it, because seriously, we need some engagement going. In the last video, I didn't leave a like goal. So this one, I don't know, let's get this video to 20 likes. I think that's fair. If you guys want to like push it, let's see if we could try to get 50, but I'm not gonna be greedy. Right now our subscriber count is sitting pretty chill. Trying to grow it obviously, but it is what it is, I guess. You know, I'm not consistent with the uploads, but trying. So yeah, that's that. Hope everyone's doing good. I'm doing good. And as usual, you know the vibe, you know the thing. We out, and see y'all in the next video, which will hopefully be a gear talk. So I don't know, gear talk, creative talk, they're different series. Last video, someone called me out in the comments and said it was episode 2 or 1. I don't know. Damn, see, now I'm confused. All right, see y'all later.